The rapid increase in the price of Bitcoin is leading some investors to argue that the cryptocurrency is a better hedge against inflation and turmoil than gold. Prices recently reached an all-time high of over $4,000 a Bitcoin in a five-fold increase from November 2016. But why has Bitcoin rocketed higher? Channels TV VOA financial correspondent Jill Malandrino sat with the head of product strategy at OptionsPlay, Tony Zhang, and he talks about Bitcoin's explosive growth in cryptocurrency globally.
Joining me is Tony Zhang. He's the head of product strategy at OptionsPlay. But rather than focus on options, we're going to look at what perhaps is an even bigger story than the market movement this year, and that is Bitcoin. Tony, thank you for joining me at NASDAQ. And let's just run through that. This Bitcoin story has been pretty tremendous.
Absolutely. So it's actually got a bit of a feel of the late 90s .com boom in terms of who's trading this, how fast the price of Bitcoin has actually increased from just a few $100s to $4,000 in the span of about a year. And it's just, and now we have almost 1,000 other cryptocurrencies built on the same technology, following in the footsteps.
It's quite incredible. As you had mentioned to me before, it has the market cap, Bitcoin of Costco, of Netflix.
Yep.
That's incredible.
Absolutely. And this happened just all over the last few months. Just a few months ago, Bitcoin was trading at about $25 to $40 billion, and it's doubled in size over the last just month or so. So it's trading off of a lot of technicals,
right.
and actually when you look at the technicals of Bitcoin, there are a lot of price levels where you can see buyers and sellers stepping in, and it's actually still very easy to read these charts currently because there's relatively unsophisticated investors currently trading these products.
Well, what do the charts indicate? Because it's had such a massive run. Do the charts suggest possibly a pullback, or it has established a range?
So at the current levels, there is no prior history to go off of. However, if you look at the price levels or the appreciation of Bitcoin, it does look very similar to oil back in 2008. It looks like the .com boom back in the late 90s. So if you look at those patterns, you do think that perhaps Bitcoin will come back probably down to the 2000 level, which is probably a bit more realistic for such a currency, but it's always difficult to value at this time.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Tony. I'm Jill Malandrino, and this is VOA Channel's Business News.
The North American Free Trade Agreement may not include any Asian nations, but analysts say the trade-dependent region will be closely watching how the Trump administration handles talks. Economists believe although those talks may seem a world away, they have major implications for countries like South Korea. New talks are set to begin next week on amending the deal, and Seoul will likely be looking to NAFTA for clues to its future.
President Donald Trump has railed against many previously negotiated trade deals since his campaign. After axing the Trans-Pacific Partnership that would have linked major Asian economies with the U.S., Trump has now set his sights on NAFTA. The trilateral trade agreement between Canada, the U.S. and Mexico is coming under the knife as renegotiations began this week between the countries. At a joint press conference in Washington, D.C. on Wednesday with the three NAFTA countries, a U.S. trade representative issued tough rhetorics, saying NAFTA has fundamentally failed many Americans and needs major improvement. But analysts argue that the tough rhetoric on NAFTA could have another impact on Asia and could turn Canada's head toward the Pacific. Jeffrey Scott, a trade expert and senior fellow at the Paterson Institute for International Economics, a Washington, D.C.-based think tank, believes the trade agreement is not playing a big role in turning the trade deficit to surplus due to its low efficiency.
The trade agreement itself is only going to make a marginal impact on our overall trade balance. Much more important is what we do at home in terms of our own fiscal and monetary policies that will affect overall economic activity in our countries, and that will determine whether we run trade deficits or surpluses.
The United States ran an $11 billion deficit with Canada last year and a $63 billion deficit with Mexico. The Economist argues that Trump's administrative team seemingly does not understand that.
Given the policies that are being pursued, given the policies that Trump wants to achieve in terms of tax cuts that would expand the budget deficit, we're likely to run larger trade deficits with Mexico and Canada, and that's going to lead some of the political advisors to President Trump and the president himself to complain more about our trading partners.
In July, the U.S. Trade Representative Office listed improve the U.S. trade balance and reduce the trade deficit with the NAFTA countries as the first and foremost goal for the renegotiations in Washington, D.C.
In the White House.
Oil prices fall in early trade as part of a broad-based sell-off across markets, despite signs of tightening in the crude markets. Brent futures were at $50.93 per barrel, down 10 cents from their last close. U.S. West Texas Intermediate were at $47.02, and that's 0.2% lower than the previous figure. Output levels from OPEC and non-OPEC members is expected to deepen, which is plans to restrict production by 1.8 million barrels per day to tighten the market. In the meantime, India's oil companies have booked 4 million barrels of trade from traders Shell and Total Nigeria as the oil market awaits the country's loading schedules. Industry figures show that export plans for Foccola's Kwa Ibo, Bonny Light, Bonga, Aminam and Ustan all showed lower figures compared with September. Focado's exports were scheduled to rise to 256,000 barrels per day, while Kwa Ibo, the largest export stream, and the other grades released were all set to slip month on month. October loading plans include 1.7 million barrels per day, aboard 55 cargoes, up from 50 in September, and the highest level since September 2016. In the meantime, Nigeria's main crude export rival, Angola, is set to hit a 13-month high in October this year. Business Incorporated returns in just a moment. Please stay with us.